South Korea is stronger than North Korea in almost every visible way. Richer economy, better technology, global companies, modern cities, advanced weapons, a powerful alliance with the United States. But Pyongyang may be watching one weakness Seoul cannot easily hide. South Korea is running out of future workers, future taxpayers, future soldiers, and future families. That is why South Korea's survival plan is not just about babies, it is about national power. If you want the Korean Peninsula explained beyond simple North Korea threats and South Korea success stories, subscribe to Korea Radar. This channel breaks down the systems behind the headlines: population, technology, defense, economy, and the strategic pressure between Seoul and Pyongyang. Now let us look at the survival plan North Korea is watching closely. The overlooked number is not only the fertility rate, it is the chain reaction behind it. South Korea's fertility rate rose to around 0.80 in 2025 after falling to 0.72 in 2023. That sounds like progress. But even 0.80 is far below the replacement level of about 2.1. At the same time, South Korea's population is projected to fall sharply over the coming decades. Its elderly share is projected to rise. Its working-age population is projected to shrink, and the school system is already feeling it. The question is not whether South Korea disappears. It will not. The real question is whether South Korea can remain rich, defended, innovative, and socially stable while its demographic base gets weaker. That is the open loop. Can Seoul redesign national power faster than demography erodes it? Start with the first survival strategy: birth policy. For years, South Korea has tried to raise births through money, childcare support, housing promises, parental leave, tax benefits, and local incentives. The logic is simple. If having children is expensive, reduce the cost. If parents are exhausted, give more support. If young couples delay marriage, help them start earlier. On paper, this makes sense. But South Korea's fertility crisis is not just a cash problem. It is a whole-life problem. Housing is expensive, stable jobs are hard to secure, education pressure is intense, parents worry about private tutoring, women often face a harsher career penalty after childbirth. Men are also trapped in demanding work cultures. Young people may want families, but they look at the system and ask a brutal question: can I survive the cost? That is why cash alone has not changed the structure enough. A one-time payment can help. Childcare support can help. Housing support can help. But if the whole economy tells young adults that marriage and children will reduce their freedom, money, career, and sleep, then the fertility decision remains difficult. This is where Pyongyang watches differently from ordinary viewers. North Korea may be poorer, more isolated, and more restricted, but South Korea's strength depends on a large, skilled population. Engineers, soldiers, nurses, factory workers, teachers, caregivers, programmers, small business owners. Taxpayers, parents. A country can buy weapons, it can build factories, it can import machines, but it cannot instantly manufacture a generation. That is why low fertility becomes a security issue, not tomorrow, not next week, but over decades. The second survival strategy is automation. South Korea is not waiting passively for labor shortages to hit. It is already one of the most automated countries on Earth. Its factories use industrial robots at a world-leading scale. Its electronics, auto, shipbuilding, logistics, and service sectors are all moving toward more automation. This is not science fiction. In South Korea, automation is not only a dream about the future, it is already part of how the economy works. And in some areas, robots do solve real problems. If there are fewer workers, machines can help factories keep producing. If labor costs rise, automation can protect competitiveness. If dangerous or repetitive jobs are hard to fill, robots can take over some tasks. If South Korea wants to compete in semiconductors, batteries, vehicles, defense manufacturing, and advanced logistics, automation is not optional. It is survival infrastructure. But here's the catch. Robots can replace tasks. They cannot replace society. A robot can weld, a robot can move parts, a robot can deliver food, a robot can assist in a hospital. But robots do not raise children. They do not pay taxes in the same way workers do. They do not care for elderly parents with emotional trust. They do not fill classrooms. They do not build communities. They do not solve loneliness. They do not automatically fix pensions. And they do not remove the political question of who owns the productivity gains. That is the problem. If automation increases output, but the gains mostly go to large firms and shareholders, then the national survival plan becomes uneven. Factories may survive, exports may survive, but households may still feel insecure. Young people may still delay family formation. Older people may still need care. Regional towns may still empty out. So automation is powerful, but it is not a full replacement for people. It buys time, it increases capacity, it protects certain industries, but it cannot rebuild the demographic foundation by itself. Now ask the Korea radar question. Why does Pyongyang care? Because North Korea studies South Korea's long game. Not only its weapons, its economy, its morale, its alliance, its social stress, its ability to keep funding defense. If South Korea uses robots to keep factories running, Pyongyang sees resilience. If South Korea's aging society strains budgets, Pyongyang sees pressure. If technology helps Seoul stay ahead, Pyongyang sees a harder target. If automation creates inequality and social frustration, Pyongyang sees vulnerability. The survival plan is not one policy. It is a contest over whether South Korea can keep national power coherent. The third strategy is immigration. South Korea has increasingly turned to foreign workers. Factories need labor, farms need labor, shipyards need labor, care work needs labor, small businesses need labor. Some sectors already depend on migrant workers more than the national conversation likes to admit. This is practical. If there are not enough domestic workers, bring in workers from abroad. But here again, the solution creates another question. Are these workers temporary labor or future citizens? That distinction matters. Family settlement can be difficult. Social acceptance can be uneven. Schools, housing, language, workplace rights, and local integration all matter. And South Korea's national identity has historically been built around ethnic Korean continuity. That makes large-scale immigration politically sensitive. The country can import labor faster than it can build a new national consensus about belonging. That is the hidden friction. South Korea may need more migrants, but it also needs a society that can absorb them without creating a permanent underclass. If immigration only fills low-wage jobs without integration, it may solve labor shortages while creating social tension. If immigration expands too slowly, the workforce keeps shrinking. If it expands too quickly without planning, communities may feel pressure. There is no simple answer, but there is one clear truth. South Korea cannot discuss survival without discussing immigration honestly. The fourth strategy is defense modernization. This is where the title becomes directly about Pyongyang. A shrinking South Korea still has to deter North Korea. It still has to maintain readiness. It still has to fund advanced systems. It still has to keep a conscription-based force credible as the pool of young men shrinks. It still has to coordinate with the United States. It still has to watch missiles, artillery, cyber operations, submarines, drones, and nuclear threats. This is why South Korea's three-axis defense concept matters. At a high level, it includes the ability to detect and respond to North Korean missile threats, defend against incoming attacks, and threaten severe retaliation if North Korea launches a major strike. The details are complex, and this is not a tactical guide. The important point is strategic. South Korea is trying to offset demographic pressure with technology, precision, surveillance, missile defense, and alliance coordination. That tells us something. Seoul knows it cannot rely on manpower alone, so it is trying to become faster, more networked, more precise, and harder to coerce. That is exactly the kind of strategy Pyongyang watches closely. North Korea may have massed artillery, missiles, cyber tools, special operations forces, and nuclear weapons. South Korea responds with advanced conventional capabilities, alliance intelligence, missile defense, and industrial depth. But all of that costs money. And money comes from workers, companies, exports, taxes, and social stability. So demographics return again. A smaller workforce has to support a larger elderly population. A larger elderly population increases welfare costs. Higher welfare costs compete with defense spending. Defense spending competes with education, housing, childcare, and industrial policy. This is the central trap. South Korea needs to spend more on the very policies that keep it alive. but the population structure makes every budget fight harder. This is why the survival plan must be coordinated. Birth policy cannot sit alone. Automation cannot sit alone. Immigration cannot sit alone. Defense cannot sit alone. Exports cannot sit alone. They are all parts of the same machine. If you are still watching, you already see the real story. South Korea's challenge is not just low birth rate. It is whether Seoul can keep enough workers, technology, defense capacity, social trust, and alliance strength to deter North Korea over time. Subscribe to Korea Radar because we explain the Korean Peninsula as a system, not a headline. The fifth strategy is exports. South Korea's economy is built on global competitiveness. Semiconductors, ships, cars, batteries, displays, consumer electronics, defense exports, AI-related supply chains. These are not just business sectors, they are national power engines. Samsung and SK Hynix are not just companies, they are part of South Korea's strategic position in the global economy. Hyundai and Kia are not just car makers. They connect South Korea to global manufacturing, batteries, mobility, and trade. Korean shipyards matter for commercial shipping, energy, and naval capacity. Korean defense exports help Seoul build influence beyond the peninsula. This export machine helps pay for defense, welfare, research, infrastructure, and national prestige. And in 2026, South Korea's export performance showed how powerful this engine can still be, especially with the AI-driven demand for chips. That is the optimistic side. South Korea is not simply declining. It is still one of the most capable industrial democracies in the world. Its companies can move fast, its engineers are world-class, its manufacturing base is deep, its culture has global reach, its alliance network is strong, its military is serious, its state capacity is high. So this is not a doom story. But export dependence creates vulnerability. If South Korea relies on exports to carry more of the national burden, then global shocks matter more. A chip downturn matters, China competition matters, US-China technology conflict matters, energy prices matter, supply chain disruption matters, Taiwan tensions matter, American industrial policy matters, Chinese manufacturing pressure matters. A country can be rich and still exposed. That is South Korea's position. Its survival plan depends on selling advanced products to the world. But the world is becoming more fragmented. Trade is becoming more political, technology is becoming more securitized, alliances are becoming more transactional, and North Korea is watching that too. Pyongyang does not need South Korea to fail overnight. It only needs to watch whether Seoul becomes more distracted, more divided, more financially stretched, and more dependent on outside conditions. This is how long-term competition works. Not always through invasion, not always through sudden crisis, sometimes through patience. One side watches the other side's weak points mature. South Korea's visible strength is impressive, but Pyongyang watches invisible pressure. Fewer births, more elderly citizens, fewer conscripts, more pension pressure, more labor shortages, more need for migrants, more need for robots, more dependence on exports, more need for alliance support. Each pressure alone is manageable. Together, they become a national strategy test. Now let us close the open loop. Can Seoul redesign national power faster than demography erodes it? The answer is not yes or no. The answer is that South Korea is trying to do 5 things at once. It is trying to raise births, even if the rebound remains fragile. It is trying to automate, even though robots cannot replace society. It is trying to bring in workers, even though integration is politically hard. It is trying to modernize defense, even though manpower and budgets are under pressure. It is trying to rely on exports, even though global competition is getting harsher. That is the survival plan, not one miracle. A bundle of imperfect answers. And Pyongyang watches because each answer affects the balance on the Korean Peninsula. If births recover, South Korea's future becomes stronger. If automation succeeds, South Korea keeps industrial power. If immigration is handled well, labor shortages become less dangerous. If defense modernization stays funded, North Korea faces a harder deterrent. If exports remain strong, Seoul can pay for the entire system. But if these pieces fail to connect, South Korea could become an advanced country with a shrinking base, still rich, still armed, still democratic, still globally important, but older, more unequal, more dependent, more stretched, and more vulnerable to pressure. That is not collapse. It is constraint. And in geopolitics, constraint matters. North Korea does not have to be stronger than South Korea in every area. It only has to believe that time gives it leverage. That is why South Korea's survival plan must be more than a policy list. It has to become a national power strategy. Births, work, robots, migrants, defense, exports, schools, housing, women's careers, elder care, and alliances must all fit together. Because if they do not, Seoul may win every short-term comparison and still face a harder, long-term future. Here are the three things most people miss. First, South Korea's demographic crisis is also a security issue. It affects workers, soldiers, taxpayers, schools, pensions, defense spending, and long-term deterrence against North Korea. Second, Seoul's survival plan depends on several systems working together. Higher births, automation, immigration, exports, defense modernization, and alliances must reinforce each other, or each one solves only part of the problem. Third, Pyongyang does not need South Korea to collapse. It only needs to watch whether South Korea's long-term power becomes harder to sustain. Write your view in the comments. Which survival strategy matters most for South Korea? Higher births, robots, immigration, exports, defense, or alliances? And subscribe to Korea Radar if you want clear analysis of South Korea, North Korea, and the Korean Peninsula without panic, propaganda, or easy slogans. South Korea's survival plan is not hidden because nobody sees it. It is hidden because most people see the pieces, but miss the system.